This is the Graceful Atheist Podcast. Welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast. My name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. First off, I'd like to mention a new feature from my podcasting host. I host the podcast on anchor.fm, which I highly recommend for anyone else who's interested in doing their own podcast. And they have a new feature that allows you, the listener, to send me a voicemail. So if you'd like to send me a message and potentially have your voicemail on one of the future Graceful Atheist podcasts, find the link in the show notes and send me a message. Either let me know what you think of the podcast or send in a question that you'd like to have answered. This is the regular reminder to please rate and review the podcast in Apple Podcasts and iTunes. The more rates and reviews the podcast gets, the more visible it will become for future listeners. On to today's episode. Today's episode is a Deconversion Anonymous episode, and my guest is the Sassy Atheist. Sassy has a YouTube channel where she describes the deconversion process, as well as her search for truth, and ultimately how she's trying to be a better human being. The main themes of the podcast are deconversion, secular grace, and brutal honesty, and Sassy hits all three of these themes in her story today. The main thing I want you to notice is that Sassy has been searching for truth from a very young age. It's gone through fits and starts and hit many of the different faith traditions, including contradictory faith positions. At times it sounds as though her belief systems were in a whirlwind, but that is part of the brutal honesty of her story. She also tells of a heartbreaking, lost or diminished relationship with a family member. If you've gone through the deconversion process, you may have experienced something very, very similar. And now I give you the Sassy Atheist. Sassy Atheist, thank you for being on the podcast.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
So this is what we call a Deconversion Anonymous story, and this is an opportunity for you to tell your origin story, how you became a believer, and how we got to now, effectively. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you are now, like what you're trying to accomplish these days, and then we'll dig into your deconversion story in just a moment.
I'm Sassy Atheist. I created a YouTube channel to talk about important topics like religion and religion versus politics, abortion, and just a lot of different things that have that effect to society.
Yeah.
And I also share about what I've learned throughout my journey, from being a Christian to all the many times I've had doubts, and then now to as an atheist.
Okay. Can you tell me about the name or the moniker Sassy Atheist? How'd you come up with that?
Well, I've always been, part of my personality is, a little sassy. So, I remember just trying to come up with names, like something to really fit me, and since I'm an atheist now and I'm sassy, it just fit. There was no other, I couldn't think of another name to fit me and to represent, part of who I am.
Yeah.
And so I use that name now for my social media, except for my Instagram, like that, I have my real name on there. But
Okay.
yeah.
And the main thing that you would want people to find you on is YouTube. Is that correct?
YouTube and Twitter. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll definitely have links for those in the show notes, so people can. All right, Sassy. So let's talk about kind of the arc of your spiritual journey, for lack of a better term. I understand you didn't start out as a hardcore Christian. So what was your growing up life like?
I was brought up to believe in whatever I wanted. My mom, she believes that there's something, and same along with my sister. And so sometimes the only time that I went to church as a child and growing up, it was just around the holidays, like Christmas and Easter. That was basically the only time I went to church.
Yeah.
And we would sometimes pray around the dinner table, but that was mainly like around family gathering, just sometimes.
Right.
I did go to a private Christian elementary school for a little bit, and that wasn't a good experience.
Interesting. Okay.
Not for religious reasons. It was just the school it was supposed to be about respect and and just encouragement, and it was nothing. It was not like that at all. It was bullying. There was I had a hard time there. But anyway, so I didn't really start getting into religion until around, I'd say, about preteen, around that, yeah. And because of course, when you get older, you start having questions.
Right.
You start questioning things, and that's when I started learning about more about Christianity, and just trying to figure out what I wanted to believe in. That was like my main goal, was just to finally come to a conclusion, just come to a belief and end it there. Because
Right.
I was, over time, I was getting really kind of depressed. I thought there was something wrong with me, because of every single time that I thought, oh yes, now I found something, I believe in it, and I start to have doubts, start to have questions, and then I wouldn't believe in it more, and I kept doing the same thing over and over, and I was just, and that was kind of held over my head. I would be judged for that, for constantly changing my mind and my beliefs, and it just, that kind of hurt me, and so I come from a long line of religious people, religious family members. There's a lot of Catholics. I come from a long line of Catholics.
Okay. Yeah.
And I have other family members that are Episcopalian. I don't think anyone is Mormon. I don't think that.
Okay.
And my one family member, who was my Bible study teacher and my Christian mentor, he is he's Catholic by marriage. He had to become Catholic to marry my aunt. But I would consider him Baptist, kind of, because he's a Bible believing Christian. I mean, he doesn't believe in all these denominations. He's just, you believe the Bible, you live by it, and that's it.
So you're preteen, and was it Catholicism that you say you went into first, or?
No, the church that I grew up going to is Episcopal.
Okay.
And so that was kind of one of the reasons why I didn't really think that homosexuality there was anything really wrong with it. I mean, there were times where I kind of was uncomfortable, just because of my surrounding, and homosexuality was a very sensitive topic in my family.
Okay.
So I was interested in the Catholic religion. I to this day, I still don't even know why at first I was even interested in it at all, because I hardly knew anything about it.
So that's really my question, is what drew you to religion, whichever you started out with? What was it that you found compelling at the time?
Well, before I almost at first I was interested in the Catholicism, and then I forgot about it. I just gave up on it. Okay. And then I was thinking about, I want to get baptized at a Episcopalian church. But and then part of the reason why I didn't stick with one denomination, because I was just trying to find what I thought was truth. I tried to find, because I knew that certain beliefs in Catholicism and in the Episcopal religion, it went against the Bible. They had different beliefs, and so I wanted to find a church where I could be part of a community. I could finally find something that connected with what I believed in.
Okay, can I jump in here? Let's just a couple things I think I just let slide by, and I want to dig into them a little bit more. So you had a sense that the Episcopal Church didn't live up to biblical standards. Where did you get the standard to make that kind of evaluation?
Well, I knew what the Bible said, and then when I kept studying about the Episcopalian religion and just like the Catholicism, like, for instance, homosexuality is okay in the Episcopal Church, but in the Bible, it's clearly not. And I was just conflicted. I was like, well, what do I mean, I want to go to this church, but it doesn't go by the Bible. But I was really conflicted.
And so you were reading the Bible on your own then, or exploring?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would have Bible study with my family member, and I would also read it on my own time, and I would read more and more, learn more, and I would just more knowledge.
Okay.
I learned as I grew older, and as I dwelled deeper into my faith, I that's how I got to being later on evangelical
Okay.
Christian. Yeah.
So interesting. So I want, listeners out there, if you're listening, I want to make sure that you understand we're getting to a point here. We're exploring where Sassy was at the time. And I think it's fascinating, me knowing the end of the story, just to hear the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
That you start off in an Episcopal church, and then after having, read through the Bible and the influence of your family member, you start to think, hey, you know what? This doesn't seem to match up as far as you thought at the time. So that's really fascinating to me. That's really
Yeah. And like I said, that was just one of the the reason why I had struggled for so long to come to a decision of what I believe to be true, because things just weren't adding up. What the different religions, Christian denominations, those beliefs just weren't adding up with the Bible. And I was like, and there were also certain things in the Bible, well, a lot of things that, and deep down, I knew that it didn't make any sense, but I let it fly over my head. I just didn't think too much about it. It was actually last year where I almost became Catholic. I did.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the second time where I had, because the reason that I got into Catholicism was before that I was evangelical. I was trying to look for a church, and I wanted a Bible believing church.
Mm-hmm.
And there aren't any like Bible believing churches in my hometown. It's just Catholic, Episcopalian, and a Methodist. There's no like Baptist or anything like that.
Okay.
But anyway, so if a person suggested that I should just try out one of my local Catholic churches, and because they heard a lot of great things, and one of the main things important things I wanted was to have to be part of a community. Right. So I thought, okay, well, I don't know, because I know that there are pagan origins in the Catholic religion, and I wanted to go to a church where I knew that didn't have that. It didn't have any of that. It wasn't associated with, evil like that. So I had set up an appointment with the priest. I asked questions, and he basically he debunked all of what I had read and studied. He said that the rosary wasn't used to the origin of that wasn't used to pray to their pagan god, we don't worship statues. We pray to them like you would pray to God or to a family member, or for a family member. Okay. And I was like, okay. And I was stupid enough to believe what he said. I trusted his knowledge, and I trusted what he said. So I said, okay then, okay, fine. They were wrong then. all what I had read, the people were wrong.
Okay.
So I went to church, kept going, liked it, and I started going to Bible study at the church, and I set up an appointment to take the RCIA classes.
And just so I'm not sure I know what that is, can you tell me what's the
the RCIA classes is basically you learn more about the Catholic religion. It's just it takes about a year to actually become Catholic.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, and so it's just I've never understood that, because it's like you have to. Why do I have to prove my faith in God? Why do I have to show that I'm good enough, or that I'm smart enough, I know enough to become Catholic? I never liked that, but I was going to go along with it. I was going to take it because I really wanted to become Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I would pray the rosary. I tried to pray the rosary every day. I tried to go to church as often as I could. And then I stopped going to church when a group of members there, they because I valued my one of my family members, who was my Christian mentor, my uncle, my great uncle. I valued his opinion, what he said about the Bible. I valued it so much, and I believed him. And when I mentioned something that he said, they quickly just said, "Oh no, he's wrong. You need to talk. You need to talk to the priest about it. He'll have the answer. He knows." So that kind of just hurt. That just really hurt me bad. And that was the last night. That was the last day that I went to that church. And I left in a voicemail. I said, "I'm sorry. I'm not gonna take the RCI classes. I'm not gonna become Catholic."
A few things leap out at me about that story. One, you, at a relatively young age, you're searching for truth, and you cared about the answer, right? You wanted it to be the truth.
Yes.
And then two, you have a number of different influences. You have the family member that sounds slightly more evangelical, or Bible.
Yes.
Bible. You've got the Episcopalian background, and then the Catholicism. And here you're faced with the contradictions between faith positions before you even really know what you yourself believe, but you're just trying to figure all that out on your own.
Exactly.
That's an amazing story. So, okay, so you decide that just doesn't sound right to you, that their rejection of your family member's perspective.
Yeah.
And what happens next?
So I went back after I decided that I wasn't going to be Catholic anymore. I felt really guilty. I felt really guilty about it all. And I prayed my heart out to God, and I apologized to him for believing that he was pointing me to the church, and for thinking that this was to answer to my prayers. And I just kind of repented. And I said, "I'm sorry that I prayed to Mary when I should have been praying more to you, or to you completely." And I was really, really regretful for that, and I cried about it. So I went back to being evangelical.
You felt guilty.
Yes, I felt guilty.
And so you went back to being evangelical. Was it just the family member, or was there a church around that you were participating in?
Before I started going to church, to Catholic church, I took a long break from going to church. So that was the last time I went to a church. I was involved in that, and before then, I was involved in the Episcopal church. Yeah.
So now, about how old are you at this point?
I'm 19. I will be 20 in November.
You are currently?
Yeah, I'm currently 19.
And when you say kind of your last day as a Catholic person, how old were you then?
I was 18.
All right. So this is all fairly recent for you. You're kind of going.
Yes. I only became an atheist in January of this year.
Okay. So, so you decide that, okay, Catholicism is not for you, and you are trying to seek after God as you understand.
Yeah. Yeah. After I prayed, I realized that there is no other truth but the Bible, and I was just going to live by it. I was just so into my faith, and I believed in God so much that I truly believed that I was never going to stop believing in Him.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the times in the past where I started having doubts and I would get angry at Him because I would pray and pray and I wouldn't get any answers, I would just kind of kept crawling back to Him. When I thought I didn't believe in Him, I would crawl back and again and then over and over.
Right.
So, yeah.
And would you do so because you felt guilty, or was it because you felt like you were getting something out of that relationship?
The reason why I kept crawling, I would say crawling back to God, because it just seemed like every time I stopped believing in Him and I tried and I believed in something else, I would just there was just always something. I would just always point me back to Him, and then I would just kept thinking that He's there. He's just trying to tell me that He's real. That He's just trying to tell me the truth, show me the truth.
So again, it feels like you really had a sense of that there was a right way to worship God, and you were trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
kind of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you felt guilty when you felt like you were doing it wrong.
Yes, exactly. Every time I thought I was doing something, or I was trying to figure out what was right, and then I would believe in God again, I would apologize and say that I believe in you. I will never stop believing in you. And
Yeah.
I had many guilt guilty feelings throughout my whole time believing in Him whenever I did something wrong or I thought I did something wrong.
Right. Wow. Okay. So clearly this is not the end of the story. So what were the doubts? And you can pick any time frame here, or even, throughout that, just seeking after the truth. But what were the doubts? What were the earliest doubts that you had that maybe that God wasn't a real?
Oh, gosh, there was just so many of them. One of them was when it came to dinosaurs. I've always, even when I was a Christian, I believed that dinosaurs existed. I was never one of those Christians that thought that the whole thing was made up,
Right.
And so I knew the Bible never talked about them. And then I also, when I also read about how the Noah's flood, that story was in with some other different religions. I think before Christianity, and I was like, well, if the Bible says it to be true, and if there was another story and the same kind of like similar story, another religion that came way before Christianity, then which is true? Which one is true?
Right.
It was many different things where I knew it didn't click, it didn't connect, and just like many different Bible translations, different Bibles, I collected, well, I was given a lot of Bibles though, and I have a Bible which has about 4 different versions that give comparisons.
Right.
And I started highlighting and comparing them, and I was like, man, this just, they say it says something different, and so which, and I also had believed, well, later on I believed that the King James Bible was the only true one.
Okay.
And I later on realized that it wasn't. No Bible is true.
Right.
They're all just created by different people. translated differently. There's different meanings. Some stories were taken out and or put in, whatever. Yeah.
So continuing on with the doubt, I guess the question I want to get to is, you talked about, in your words, crawling back to God every time.
Yeah.
What was the doubt that stopped you from doing that? What was it that you said, you know what, that's the thing that's wrong?
When I finally stopped crawling back to God, it was the day that I was talking to a few atheists on Twitter, and I before then I had told myself that I was going to be more understanding and more compassionate toward um, unbelievers, and I would listen to what they had to say, and so I did, and something just clicked, and I'm like, oh my God, they're right. Like, I've been wrong this whole time, and I've been just living my life just dedicated to, a God created by people, and I just broke down in tears. I was on my bed and I broke down in tears because I didn't I'm gonna start crying now.
That's okay.
I didn't I was so I had so many different emotions. I was confused. I was upset. I was happy. I was just a whole bunch of different mixed emotions while crying. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I can't believe in something that I have no way of proving that he exists. There's no way. And there's so many wrong things within what I believe to be true. I remember I remember telling my mom, and I broke down and I apologized to her. I'm gonna start crying again. To my sister for preaching so much, and for preaching forgiveness, and telling everyone that they'll be judged if they don't repent and believe and follow the Bible. And I remember calling my family member, my great uncle, my former mentor, and I told him, I said, I don't believe in God anymore. I just can't. I cannot believe in him anymore. And I also felt kind of guilty because he said that I made him cry, that there must have been something that wrong. I must be mad at God for not believing in him, but I will find my way back. I will find my way back to him, and the Holy Spirit will tell him the reason why I stopped believing in him. And it really hurt me, because now our relationship was mainly based on our connection with faith, our beliefs.
Right.
Now, when I see him, it's only a hi and how are you?
I really feel that. Obviously, you have so much more than just a particular statement of faith that binds you, but he needs to recognize that.
Yeah, so it hurts. It hurts a little every single time that I see him, because it's just, that's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. That's just, hi, how are you? And he goes on about his business, and I go about mine. And he used to, and I was a Christian. He used to be so proud of me. He used to basically, just introduce me to everyone around him. Just this is my great niece, and she's a Christian too, and she's just wonderful. And now it's just so different.
One of the things that we talk about a lot on the podcast is that it is the very human need to feel connection and belonging to other human beings, and that's the grief that you're expressing, is the loss of that connection to him, and he can't see that he's broken that bridge, right?
When I talk about it, I don't want people to think that he's a horrible person, because he's not. It's just he's just he's his beliefs just he lives by, and so it kind of has a control over how he reacts to certain situations and or to certain people. And it's just I never want to make him look bad in front of others. I don't. I just I kind of feel guilty, or I just feel kind of bad when I tell about what has happened between us, because I'm afraid that someone will say something about him that will say that, oh, he's just a typical, you know a cruel evangelical Christian that just doesn't that cuts ties with everyone who doesn't believe in God. And that's just not technically true. That's not entirely true.
I understand, and you know him better than we do, so we'll withhold judgment and trust that your judgment is correct here, right?
Yeah. I mean, everyone's gonna have a say or an opinion, but I just I try not to talk about it a lot when it comes to that, because I just of worrying about how, or I might say something that might come across as something else when I'm talking about it, and I just don't want that to happen.
Understood.
Sorry for crying. I'm a very emotional person.
It's not a problem. Do you mind if I ask how other family members have taken the news? So as you mentioned your mom earlier, is she okay with it?
It's fine. That was just really the only strained relationship within the family, because a lot of members before me that were religious, I mean, of course they're all gone, and the ones that are alive now and are religious, they just accept others. They don't really care about what you do. You have your beliefs, I have mine. Keep just let it be, and that's about it. Yeah.
So this reminds me of there's a secular therapist out there, a guy named Brian Peck from Room to Thrive. One of the most compelling things I heard him mention was, when we go through this deconversion process, we've done our homework. We've done the reading. We've thought through the arguments. We've come to our conclusions. We've gone through the emotions. We've grieved. We've done all of these things. And then we have a conversation with a believer in our lives, and they're at step 0, right? They've done none of that work. And it's really hard to have that conversation when they are back in the bubble. They really haven't seen the outside perspective at all. And you've gone through all this growth. And that is a super challenging relationship to maintain.
Yeah. And there have been so many times where I have to keep I've kept defending myself, when there were some people when I came out that, they didn't believe me. They said that, oh, you can't just do a 180, go from being this evangelical Christian to an atheist overnight. And I said, yes, I can, because this is not the first time that I come to a realization. It's not the first time that I've had doubts, or realized something, it was just a matter of time before I really just stopped believing. It was just a matter of time. And, and yes, I switched my beliefs very quickly in the same day that but it was a long process of me coming to that final realization.
Right.
And some people just, they're still this, they were skeptical because of how fast I publicly announced my deconversion.
Okay. Have you had believers say that you were never really a real Christian to begin with?
Yes, one of the many typical things many Christians say to atheists who were a Christian. I've, because I used to say that I like I said, would say to many, I probably know majority of what Christians will say because I was them, and I've also heard it, I've read it, I've dealt with it, so I know so much, and I know how a lot of them will react. And I was like, why? If I wasn't really a Christian, then how would I have been so, just such a, I had to consider myself a true Christian because I tried to follow everything the Bible said. I mean, and even when I I read something and I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing this wrong, I would repent, and then I would do it the right way. And I prayed every single day. I prayed like 24 hours a day. I'm not kidding. Prayer was my life.
Right.
My religion. I used to say my faith and family is my life.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, yes, sharing my story is important, but that's not my life. You know what I'm saying? It's just my family is my life now, like completely. And, nothing else will ever, even when I was a Christian, of course, my family meant everything to me, but it was, there was something else that also meant everything to me, but.
Yeah, and you're encouraged to, like I remember, my experience in church, you were encouraged to acknowledge God first, that God was supreme over all other relationships. And yet this relationship with God he's the absent God. He's the hidden God. There's, he's not actually there. And you're supposed to, bring that above all of your relationships with your family and friends and other human beings. And so, what I've come to recognize after a few years of reflection is that it's the very human need to be connected with people, to have relationships. And that gets distorted within the church. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you say that the root cause of your deconversion was moral, intellectual, emotional, or something else?
I know it was the main thing was intellectual. And I think I would probably say all of it.
Okay.
More. Yeah. I mean, how I was living my life as a Christian, and when I believed, it was just a lot of it was not moral. Like I couldn't. I would say I would be against abortion. I would call mothers who had an abortion murderers, and I would say that's immoral. But then I wouldn't condemn what in the Bible, how it says God killed firstborn, children,
right?
In the plague. I would say that I may not fully understand the purpose, or the main reason why God did it. Well, I don't know why he couldn't have done something else. But it's he's God. He knows what's best, and it's just our duty as a Christian just to trust him whatever decision that he makes. And so that's just one of the things that that was not moral. That I was not moral.
Right.
And yeah, and emotionally, I just could not. I just finally had. I just could not believe. It was draining me to just keep on praying and praying and for something to happen when I would go through such hard times, and my heart would literally just feel like it was breaking because I just wanted an answer. I just wanted to hear his voice. I mean, there have been so many times where please, just all you have to do is just make a sound, or just do something, knock something off the shelf, or just do something to tell me that you're here, that you know that I'm in pain, that you know that I'm hurting and need your help, but nothing.
I'm a firm believer that it's the true believers, such as yourself, that come to deconversion, because it's when you take seriously what the Bible is talking about, a all-powerful, all-loving, omnipresent, omniscient God who interacts and intervenes in the world.
Yeah.
It's when you really believe that and start to recognize that you don't see that in the world. You don't see the world change. You don't see yourself change. You don't see your prayers answered. And it's that you believed the most that begins to lead a person to doubt, to start questioning the validity of those beliefs. What would you say that you've lost, and what have you gained after deconversion?
I've well, one of the things I lost was, a family relationship, but other than that was the only thing that I really lost from religion, from being a Christian. That was the only thing. I gained so much from becoming an atheist. I've become more confident of who I am as a person. Mm-hmm. I truly I came to a realization, and I finally accepted my sexuality. I started to not constantly judge people all the time for everything they say or do. And I've become more, I've become more forgiving and more compassionate. It's just, I gained so much from not being religious.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I had a similar feeling of being freed to actually care about people.
I mean, I've always cared about, but I just my main goal for people was to make others come to Christ, and to make sure, and also one of the things that was really just damaging for me as a person, it was when I was a Christian, is you're told that none of what you do, what you accomplish, you do it on your own, and it's wrong to take credit for what you have done.
Right.
It's all you all have to give glory to God, and it would really hurt me of all the good things that I've done or I've said to to people. I couldn't take any credit for that for myself. I couldn't say that it's because of who I am as a person. It's because I love helping people. I love being nice to people. It just all had to do with God.
Right.
Everything good that I've said, all the good things that people say, and when in Christianity you're taught that everything good you say or do, it has to do with God. And everything that you do that supposedly is wrong, it's because of you and because of the devil.
Right, exactly.
The only credit that they give you is when you do something wrong. They say that you caused it, that you did it.
That's an important observation. I think that's Very, very true. There's an asynchronous nature. Anything that's good, God gets credit, and anything that's
Yeah.
is on you. You did it. It was your fault.
Yeah, exactly.
And that can change on a dime, right? You can be the church darling whom everyone thinks is, a wonderful representation of Christ, and then you change your mind on something, or you do something that doesn't fit within their parameters, and boom, you're out.
Exactly. Yeah.
What would you say to the believers in your life, maybe the uncle that you've talked about? What would you want them to know about you now that they might not be based on assumptions, might not already know?
That I'm I'm the same person. Well, I can't say I'm the same loving, caring person as I was when I was a Christian. I just don't have a belief to make me do more things to please a deity.
Yeah.
I do what I do is because I want to do it for others. I'm nice because that's who I am and I want to help others. That's not because of what a book tells me to do. And it's just, I try to improve myself as a person. I try to be a better person every day, and I try to learn from my mistakes and to do good. And that's just it. I'm human. I'm human.
Boy, that's it. You're a human being having a human experience.
Yeah.
If you think back on the time when you were wavering back and forth, you were searching, but in particular, you say you kept crawling back to
Yeah.
God. What would you say to your past self in that position, or people that are listening now who find themselves in that loop?
I would say never believe that it's wrong to have doubts. It's never wrong to question things. It's never wrong to question people, or and just keep on searching and to keep on learning more things and learning more about your beliefs. And regardless, if you do decide one day to not believe in whatever you believe now, if you believe in a God, don't think that anyone else made you come to that conclusion. It's all you. It just took time, and it just took a lot of figuring out to do to believe what you believe now.
Right. Do you have any resources that were particularly helpful for you, like books or?
Books. Well, there was really only one book. I'm sorry. I gave it away. I cannot remember the name of it, but it talked about paganism and Christianity in itself, and that was like where I really found out about the paganism and Catholicism and Christianity in itself. But other than that, I watched a lot of atheist YouTubers.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just kept comparing. I just kept reading the Bible and kept comparing it to what other Christian denominations, preach. And that's just about it.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned reading the Bible. I definitely think that for believers who read the Bible, and if they will just take off the rose-colored glasses while they read that and actually take it as it is, rather than as they want it to be, that's a powerful thing to start the process of questioning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so this might be a hard question. Do you believe that you've hurt anyone while you were a believer?
I have. Yes, I have. It's not a hard question at all. to answer. That was when I will be making a video, hopefully down the road, about when I was preaching on Instagram. Because that specific story is really hard to talk about, because it has to do with somebody in specific that I know everyone else knows, and I just don't really want to bring that out in the open right now, and to just.
Okay, yeah, and I'm a big believer in we don't I don't mention people that I know in my past by name, and we don't want to out anybody.
Yeah, but I can say this, that when I was on Twitter, I would preach about how homosexuality was a sin, being transgender was a sin, was against God's will and design for us, and I would say that atheists have hole in their heart, that they just love living in sin, and basically the typical thing that a evangelical Christian would preach about.
Right.
And I had gotten so many. I remember getting, oh God, like almost up to 100 or so comments, like in a day, because of all the backlash, because of what I preached. And there were so many people that were against it. And I do remember being, I know that a lot of them that were against it were atheists, and that they opposed it, and they didn't believe what I preached, and they thought I was wrong. But some of them were more respectful, but there were other ones that were just playing out, like cruel, like horrible, and they would just send explicit images, in gifts, and would just say horrible things like, you should get sterilized. You shouldn't have any kids, because we don't want any more abominations coming into this world.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Like, that's what a lot of them would say. And I get that they were against what I would preach, but you don't. There are a lot of Christians out there that I strongly disagree, and I think that what they are preaching is really horrible. But I would not say that to them. I would not tell them to get sterilized, or say that I hope they don't have any kids. I hope they don't. I just hope that they don't preach that to their kids, or I hope that their kids will grow up one day to think to themselves. But when it comes to that word and the meaning behind, I just don't like it, saying it to people. Right. It's just a really harsh and just a really cruel word to say to someone.
Absolutely. And I think it's an important point that there's two sides to the coin, so there was a part of you at one point that was preaching on Instagram and maybe offending a lot of people from a religious you being religious.
Yeah. And then I had stopped, and then I got off. At the time, that happened 2 years ago when I was on Instagram.
Okay.
But then I got off of it, and but this time when I was on Twitter, it was just early. It was last year up until early January.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess where I'm going, though, is that there's a flip side, right? So there can be a tendency that on the other side of deconversion, now you're angry at the past, you've got a lot more information, you can bring the sledgehammer down on religious people. And so what I advocate for is secular grace, this idea of we need to treat each other as human beings. We have a diversity of opinions, some of which I will be diametrically opposed to. And I might have my arguments that I want to bring up and have that discussion, but as soon as I treat another person as less than human, I'm the one that's wrong more than they are, right?
Yeah, you can be against someone's beliefs. You don't have to, obviously you don't have to agree with them, but other hand, you don't have to be such a horrible person, because if you're horrible, if you're calling them out for saying horrible things or being this, horrible person, and you're turning around and doing the exact same thing, you're no better than them.
Right.
You're no better than what you're accusing them of being. So.
Right.
And I've seen it many times. I have seen it on both sides. It just doesn't matter what you believe in. There are cruel people on both sides, religious or not, and they're gonna be hypocrites on both sides,
Right.
too.
Yeah, totally.
And and also it's just I also want religious people to know is that just because if you have encountered a lot of atheists or non-religious people that were hateful, that they do not represent every single non-religious person in this world. They do not represent all of us. We're not all cruel, hateful, and and just judgmental. We're not. So don't automatically assume that don't loop us all into one category. And I try to do the same thing with everyone, atheists, religious people.
Right.
Yeah, just because we have a common belief, that doesn't mean that we're both nice people.
Yeah, definitely. It's a matter of taking one person at a time and seeing who they are.
Yeah.
Last couple questions then. Have you found any particular community, whether it's in real life or online, that you found helpful?
Online mostly. I found a very, very, very wonderful community of atheists that just have support. So a lot of them have supported me since the day that I converted to atheism. I deconverted, and I still talk with them to this day. I've gotten to know them. We help each other out. We give each other advice. We just joke around, and one of the things that I have when I was a Christian, I so-called had friends, so-called.
Yeah.
And I remember one of them, as soon as they found out that I became an atheist, she was like, "Oh no, I'm not." She blocked me.
Yeah.
From it, and I actually got in contact with someone else that I'm still friends with. He's a Christian, but he's not the typical evangelical. He's very compassionate. He's very nice, respectful of other beliefs, and he doesn't believe in pushing one's belief onto others. He doesn't believe any of that. But anyway, so I was like, asked him, like, can you ask her what I did wrong, like what happened and why? And he told me, and he showed me what she said, and she's like, I'm not going to associate with that witch. I'm not going to associate with someone who is a devil and is now evil, and so it kind of hurt that she was saying a lot of things about me that were not true, and then and so but I found a lot of people online now that we joke around, we have a lot in common, and it's just a really great community to be a part of.
Well, fantastic. I for one welcome you to whatever extent I represent any of this community. I'm glad you're here. So I want to end on a high note here. One of the things that struck me about your YouTube video is how much you expressed a desire to help out in the atheist community, to be a voice for others to gain comfort from. And I want to set up this question just briefly to say, I don't expect you to have a 3-point plan, well thought out answer here, but
okay.
When I was early in my deconversion, I was asked the same question, but what do you see as your role? How do you think you are going to be a help, be a part of this community? What do you think you add?
Since I don't know what the future holds, and everyone's different, and I honestly all I can do is just share my experience and what I've learned in my journey, and all I can hope is that it will help at least one person. It will just give some insight to others, and I'm not trying, my goal isn't to try to make someone an atheist. It's just to help them see from a logical point of view, and then hopefully that maybe they can come to a decision, and they can think for themselves and decide what they want to believe in and what they think is true. Or I need to just, like I said, all I can do is just hope that I can make a difference somehow, in some way, from what I do. And I've gotten I have some nice comments about my videos. Obviously, well, there was only one comment so far from someone that was not too happy about my part 2 video about paganism and the Catholic religion.
Okay.
But anyway, so yeah, it's just, I hope to help others with my story and my opinions on things in some way.
Well, very well said. I really believe that every one of us that comes out and tells our story, and every story is unique, even though there's rhyming, there's similarities. But your story is unique. I think there's people out there that really respond to this. I encourage all the listeners to check out Sassy Atheist YouTube channel. Again, we'll have links in the show notes. And Sassy, I just thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed my time talking to
you. Some final thoughts on the episode. Sassy is a person who's been searching for truth since her preteen years. If you are tempted to be critical of Sassy's story because she hasn't always had the right answers, or in particular if you're a believer and you think that she didn't follow the right faith tradition, or even worse, that she was never a real Christian to begin with, then you've missed the heart of her story. She says, "I considered myself a true Christian because I tried to do everything the Bible said." What more can you ask of a person than attempting to live up to what you claim is the moral standard? And her heart's cry to a non-existent God was, "Just do something. Tell me that you're here and that you know that I am in pain." How heartbreaking is that? And how brutally honest and brave of her to share her story. And in fact, her story is damning of faith traditions. The fact that she had pressure and influence from multiple different faith traditions all giving her contradictory information and advice. The fault lies with those giving contradictory advice and not with Sassy herself, who was really trying to find what the truth is, and ultimately felt guilty when she didn't feel like she was following God the right way. I'm also heartbroken with her for the loss of her relationship with her family member, whom she obviously loves. Whether you're a believer or an atheist, you must understand that the people in our lives are the most important. Disagreements about metaphysics should never break a relationship. I was also heartbroken at her need for community and just trying to fit into the various different communities, and I'm very heartened to hear that she's been welcomed by the atheist community. I want to thank Sassy Atheist for being on the podcast and for revealing her soul, for opening up her heart for us to hear her deconversion process and her search for truth. I hope that the atheist community welcomes her with open arms and provides her with the kind of friendships that she so richly deserves. As always, if you want to tell your story of deconversion or faith transitions, please get in touch with me at gracefulatheist@gmail.com. Time for some footnotes. The song is a track called Waves by Micaiah Beats. Please check out her music. Links will be in the show notes. If you'd like to help support the podcast, here are the ways you can go about that. First, help promote it. The podcast audience grows by word of mouth, If you found it useful or just entertaining, please pass it on to your friends and family. Post about it on social media so that others can find it. Please rate and review the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. This will help raise the visibility of our show. Join me on the podcast. Tell your story. Have you gone through a faith transition? You want to tell that to the world? Let me know and let's have you on. Do you know someone who needs to tell their story? Let them know. Do you have criticisms about atheism or humanism, but you're willing to have an honesty contest with me? Come on the show. If you have a book or a blog that you want to promote, I'd like to hear from you. Also, you can contribute technical support. If you are good at graphic design, sound engineering, or marketing, please let me know and I'll let you know how you can participate. And finally, financial support. There will be a link on the show notes to allow contributions which would help defray the cost of producing the show. If you want to get in touch with me, you can Google Graceful Atheist, or you can send email to gracefulatheist@gmail.com. You can tweet at me at gracefulatheist, or you can just check out my website at gracefulatheist.wordpress.com. Get in touch and let me know if you appreciate the podcast. Well, this has been the Graceful Atheist podcast. My name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. Grab somebody you love and tell them how much they mean to you. This has been the Graceful Atheist podcast.